And people should start arriving shortly. Okay. I feel like I should figure out a way to have music running through.
Oh, just FYI, I am only an MSW, not LCSW.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that.
But I love the credit. But when I got out of grad school, I was like, I'm never taking another test again as long as I live.
I don't blame you.
And my first, like, I don't know, no one pushed me in the direction. They're like, you should get tested. It's really, I mean, you should get licensed. It's really important. And I was like, we're recording, sorry.
That's okay. We'll go with MSW. That's totally fine. Hi, folks. We're just waiting for a few more people to join. Thank you for joining us on our Friday Caregiver webinar series. We're super excited to be joined today by Yael Wyte, who is one of our support group facilitators and is going to work with us today on some tips for compassionate communication with our loved ones, which in turn will help us care for ourselves. I think while we wait just another minute or so, if people want to chat us, let us know where you're tuning in from today. Hopefully you've got lots of sunshine wherever you are. And we're happy to take questions in the Q&A box there or in the chat, whichever works for you all. So in just a moment, we will get started. All right, so I'm going to turn the screen over to introduce our guest today, who is, as I mentioned, Yael, and really excited to dive into this topic today. So again, if you have questions, feel free to put them into the chat room or the Q&A section. Hi, Christine from Texas. That's exciting. Hopefully you have nice weather today. And we'll go ahead and get started. So the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to, all right, Michigan's in the house. I just wanted to give a little intro and then talk a little bit about effective communication, and then have a lot of time for questions and see if we can maybe talk about any issues you might be having. But I am a social worker. I've been working with Alzheimer's and dementia for about 16 years, and I've worked with individuals with the disease. I've worked with caregivers. I've worked in assisted living. I've worked in in-home care, but for most of my career, I've worked in not-for-profit with the Alzheimer's Association, or there used to be an organization called Lisa's Place, part of Lisa Gibbons Memory Foundation. And I just fell in love with working with this population, so I'm super, super passionate about it. I'm not sure how many of you are actively caring for someone with Alzheimer's and in what stage of the disease. So if you want to let me know through the chat, that would be great. But one of the key things, and one of the topics that I'm most passionate about explaining to caregivers, is the importance of effective communication. Without effective communication, we will often see like a ramp up of behaviors, and then an escalation of arguments and frustration. And the key, I think, from our part, is to really understand what's happening in our loved one's brain. Sorry, I have children making noise, but is to really understand what's going on in their brain and how we can relate to it. So the first thing to really understand, and I think that's one of the most frustrating things for us, is that our loved one looks the same and kind of acts the same, but then has moments where they don't understand reality as we understand it. And so things that we need to understand before we talk about communication is that when we comprehend information, we understand things in a linear process, right? We go from point A to point B to point C. Well, someone with Alzheimer's or dementia goes from point A to point C, and point B is whatever is real to them in that moment, in that time. And so that could be like, I saw you yesterday and I had my wallet and now I don't have my wallet. So you must have taken it. You're hiding it from me. You stole it from me, you whatever. And then suddenly they're accusing you of conversations, accusing you of taking things, and you're like, what? And our instant reaction is to become defensive, because why would we steal our loved ones anything? And we get defensive and we have a reaction, which causes them to have a reaction. And pretty soon we're having this big argument that we could have easily avoided by managing our communication. So I'm going to get in a little further into explaining that. But we need to understand that their ability to comprehend reality and have a rational conversation is being diminished day by day, even though we can't see it, even though it's something that's physically changing in their brain. And that's something that we need to remember, that it's not necessarily personal, it's not intentional, it's not to harm us, it's just what the disease is doing in their brain. And that's causing a lapse in communication and increase in behavior. Another thing that I like to also explain is that their short-term memory is often the first to go. And so it used to be that when you wanted to, I like this visual, but that if you wanted to record information and you had a tape recorder, you used to have to press the play button and this red record button, right? So the red record button in their brain is broken. They're not able to record new information. And so retaining the recent short-term memory becomes hard, which again can lead to communication issues and to arguments. So we want to really manage that understanding, and we want to manage these, we want to help have more effective communication so that we can have more calm conversations and less behavior episodes. So that's like the first key thing that I like to help understand. Does anyone have any questions on that?
No, not seeing any questions at this point.
Okay, great. So, so the next thing I want to talk about is the importance of, when we're communicating with someone with Alzheimer's, the key, most important thing we need to do is to meet them where they're at. I read this article a few years back about, written by a son who's living with his mother. And he said, when I'm talking to her, it's like I need to put on my spacesuit and meet her in her world. So that way I feel safe. And I'm like protected by anything that she might say, and I can see it through her lens, right? Because again, they have a different perception of reality. And so we need to meet them where they're at. So so the critical part in understanding that is that we don't argue with them and we validate them. So if they come at you with, I can't believe you stole my wallet, or why did you take my jewelry, or I can't find my car keys, or you took them, and they come at you with like accusatory words, is that we have to kind of put on our spacesuit and take a deep breath and say, okay, hold up. This is not them. This is the disease. I need to take a breath a minute. And I can just say, sorry, you're right. I shouldn't have taken that without asking you, or I borrowed it and I didn't tell you, or whatever you can think of in that moment. So we can validate them. So because they know that it's missing. They don't know the who, the what, the where, the why it's missing. They may have put it in their underwear drawer. They may have put it in the refrigerator, whatever the item is that's missing. But we need to validate them and say, you're right, it's missing. Let me get that for you. So we want to help minimize their agitation and their aggravation, and we want to come at it from a very calm place, because they will always respond to our emotional output, right? So if they come at you hot and you respond hotter, they're going to come hotter, and then we have a big explosive argument, which we could have avoided. We want to, but if we can stop and redirect and say, you're right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to move those. Then we can help look for you. Let me get them for you in a bit. We have allowed them to understand that we hear that there's a problem. We hear they're frustrated. We hear that they're annoyed. We're working on it, and we can move on from there. So that's another key concept in communication. The other is that we always have to be detectives, right? We always have to kind of guess and talk about what is going on with them. Why are they having this reaction in this moment? Are they agitated? Has their schedule been changed? Are they not able to find words? Have they missed, like, you know, we encourage you to implement some sort of daily routine that they can follow. They really respond well to a daily routine. So have they missed something this morning? Like, have they had a bowel movement? Have they read the paper? Have they had breakfast? Have they gone on their morning walk? Or have they whatever? Are any of these things missing? Could this be an issue with why they feel irritated or agitated right now? Or is this a sundowning issue? For those of you who may or may not know about sundowning, it usually happens in the afternoon, later afternoon, early evening, as the sun is changing. Sometimes behaviors tend to ramp up, and so we want to be able to kind of predict that and anticipate it, so that we can try to kind of remain calm, validate, maybe engage them in an activity which they find helpful, or something to help redirect their agitation, and go from there. But we always need to remember, when we're communicating with somebody, is to meet them at eye level, to be calm, because they'll always respond to your emotional output, to remain calm, and to validate. So if there's like, oh, the sky is purple, and I see the sky is purple, whatever. Yes, isn't that beautiful? That's fantastic. Or they're calling you and saying, my neighbor's house is on fire. Thank you for letting me know. I'm going to call the fire station right now. Whether you call or not is not really the point. The point is that they have been validated and they've been heard, so that they can de-escalate their anxiety. Another thing that I explain a lot, or like to teach a lot about in communication, is that I use the term fiblets a lot, or a therapeutic lie. When we communicate, since they can't comprehend all the information and understand all the ramifications of every decision that we make in the way they used to, sometimes we have to not share the whole truth. So maybe a little later in the disease, when or even in the beginning, when they say, I haven't heard from you, I haven't seen you in weeks, and you're like, what, Mom? I was just here yesterday, or we just talked this morning. Rather than argue that, we want to validate that. We want to say, oh, you're right, I'm sorry, I will call more often. Or when you're getting ready to leave, you say something like, or getting off the phone or something, and saying, I'll talk to you later, implying that you hear them, you are validating them, but you're not given a specific time, because time is a difficult thing for them to understand. And you say, when you by saying later, again, you're validating and acknowledging their confusion, but not committing to a moment in time when you're going to see them. And that, so they can feel like calmer, saying, okay, I'll see you later. That makes sense to me. Or if you find yourself in an argument over something ridiculous, or not even ridiculous, even something serious, but you know there's no way out, you're not gonna, you can't win this one, because you'll never be able to convince them of the reality, because they only see and understand what they see in their head in that moment. You can use a fiblet or a therapeutic lie and say, I'm getting a call from work. let me go get this. I'll be back in a minute. So that way you can get out of the room, you can take a breath, you can de-escalate, you can go into the bathroom and scream, or you can take a lap around the house or around the block or whatever it is. And hopefully when you come back into the room, the situation has de-escalated, potentially forgotten, not sure, but you can at least kind of take a breath so that you can re-enter the room in a calm manner to de-escalate the mood and the tension in the room. And then I 100% believe that ice cream was invented for this disease, because I always love to redirect with ice cream and say, oh wow, it's really hot outside, would you like to go get some ice cream? And I would make the task as wonderful and inclusive as possible. Maybe you can get some ice cream from the freezer, and maybe we can add some toppings, and maybe we can add some syrup, and then really engage them in the activity of creating some ice cream. Or maybe, depending on how mobile they are, maybe we can take them for a ride, put the window down for a minute, get them around the block, or go to get some ice cream. Or I love this tip. One of my caregivers keeps a bucket of pre-made cookie dough in her fridge. And they're like, let's go make some cookies so we can share them with or eat them later. Today, by the way, is National Chocolate Chip Cookie Day, so this is a great exercise. Saying, let's go make some cookies, because in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, the kitchen is going to smell fantastic, right? And you're going to have cookies, and hopefully whatever we were arguing about before will have been forgotten for at least the immediate little bit. And I've never heard of anyone smelling fresh cookies and saying, I don't want any cookies. No, I refuse them, right? We automatically are, I feel like, tuned in to say, oh, cookies, I love them. Yes, please. And no one can be angry with a cookie. Maybe they can, but I found that generally works. So these are some of the major tips that I like to talk about when we talk about communication: is implementing a fiblet or a therapeutic lie, validating, not arguing, meeting the person at eye level, right? If you're trying to ask them a question or trying to understand, trying to have them understand something, and you're talking from behind them and they can't necessarily see you, they don't have a frame of reference, that can become confusing and agitating. So we always want to meet them at eye level and talk through any decisions or choices, difficulties, any conversation. We want to have them have a frame of reference. With regards to that, we want to try to minimize some of the decisions that they have to make, because it's becoming more and more complex for them. So we want to always empower them to feel like they're contributing and they are the person who has, maintained their livelihood and dignity for the last X amount of years. We're not taking away all control from them, because that's something that they're going to fight on. They want to maintain an element of control, at least in the early mid stages. So when decisions become difficult, you can say something like, rather than giving them 30 choices, just saying, okay, we're going to the doctor's today. We got to get dressed. Do you want to wear the red one or the blue one? Right. So they're still making a choice, but rather than having to look at their whole closet and say, I don't know, this is way too big for me, they can choose between the red or the blue one. Or when you go out to eat, rather than get a menu with a million different items, you can just say, I'm feeling like spaghetti. Do you want the spaghetti or the chicken? So choosing already between two things that that they like, so that we can minimize that. That will also, all of that helps eliminate some of the frustration, make the communication much smoother, and ultimately really helping you have a little more time to breathe, because every argument that we avoid adds hopefully a few minutes of chill time that you can take for yourself at some point in the day. So I feel like I've shared a lot of information. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions, or want me to repeat anything?
Yeah, that was so many amazing tips. And if anybody has employed any of these in your own caregiving, and you have found any of these techniques to be particularly effective, we'd love to hear about that as well. And maybe while we're waiting for people to enter their questions, Yael, you can explain a little bit about I mean, you touched on it just now, but how employing some of these techniques and sort of taking a pause to remind ourselves where our loved ones are at help to, in turn, give us the space to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, thank you. So hopefully this is not communication, but this is just personal. There is a thing called decision fatigue, right? We have to we make decisions every day, every moment, right? Like, what do I want for breakfast? Or when you go to the grocery store, which ice cream I love ice cream, sorry, but which ice cream do I want? You're looking at 70 million different choices. You're like, I just want vanilla, but do I want this vanilla or that vanilla or this vanilla or vanilla with da-da-da? So and every time we have to make those decisions, it fatigues us just a little bit. So the similar thing with now we're adding decision making for our loved ones, and now we're making decisions for two, based on our our previous history with our loved one, and we can have a short fuse. We can I see a driving question. Fun. We can get more fatigued. So hopefully by meeting our loved one where we're at and helping to minimize some of the decisions that they make and minimizing any of the argument or agitation, we can build that onto our rest time. And I strongly advise that we build into our day, like starting with a 5-minute quiet zone, or then building that to hopefully a 10-minute one. Some of our loved ones respond better to written words than to verbal words, so we can maybe put a sign on our door and says, quiet for the next 5 minutes or something. I need to rest my eyes, or I need to just no entry for 10 minutes or something, assuming that they are in a safe place and that we can do that. But just building into our day something for ourselves where we are decision free and are able to take a few breaths that are just for us. Yeah, okay. I'm happy to talk more about that, but so we have a question on how to communicate that he can no longer drive, because the driving is such a huge challenge, and I'm sorry that you're going through that. There's numerous ways. There's no right answer. Sometimes it depends on who is giving the information. Like if you, I once actually played this out, and she's like, "Oh, this is perfect because my boyfriend's a cop." But you can have an actor come and dress as a cop or a doctor or something, like some sort of male figure. If sometimes if you feel like your loved one will respond better to a male figure, or an authoritative figure of some sort, and say, you're not allowed to drive anymore because of the disease, straight out. You can say that. Or because we've been alerted that there's been a few too many minor accidents, and we're afraid that it's going to lead to a larger accident. You can do that. You can call the DMV, and it's not anonymous because the DMV does ask who you are, but the DMV will not reveal who alerted them. Technically, with every diagnosis, a doctor is supposed to alert the DMV, but you can alert the DMV that you don't feel safe with your loved one driving anymore, and they can be the bad guy, which for the most part, no one likes the DMV anyway, right? They're an easy blaming source. The DMV will send them a note to say that their license has been confiscated. We can work on some scenario of maybe removing the car from the house, like maybe it can stay at someone else's house for a little bit, and we can come up with a piblet that says, the car's been called for a recall indefinitely, and you can kind of play that out in numerous scenarios. You don't have to get too bogged down in the fiblet, because they're not going to quiz you on it. They're not going to ask for follow-up, minutia details. So keep it vague, but allowing you some room to manipulate. You can hide the keys depending on their ability to understand. You can also just you can hopefully explain to them, it's not that you're afraid that they can't get from home to the grocery store. They've been there a million times, right? One of the things that also happens with the disease is, in addition to the potential confusion, what if they take a right instead of a left and they get lost, but also that they lose the ability to take in the peripheral information, so that their instant decisions, let's just say they're focused on the task, they're driving fine, they're paying attention to the signals, but they don't see that someone is crossing the street or that a kid is on a bike or something. They can't take that information in with enough reaction time to be effective. So that's something we could try to explain to them. So those are some options. Again, I don't know your exact circumstances and how they are, where they're at. If you want to put in more in the chat, we can try to creatively come up with a scenario. There's no right answer. It's so difficult. It's so difficult because it means so much to them to maintain their driving. You can, if it's affordable, you can potentially hire a driver rather than a caregiver. You can call it their assistant or their driver, which makes it a little more sexy to have them use it. When this pandemic is over, hopefully, I think the greatest thing about Uber and Lyft is that they don't have to feel like they are being limited, to a senior van that picks them up, or dial a ride or whatever, or a cab. Like they can potentially have a lot of availability, and having someone pick them up and be friendly and have even a social interaction and get them to and from places. Again, right now the circumstances are all a little different, but it is extremely challenging, and I 100% empathize with your situation. There isn't an easy way, but using maybe a combination of fiblets, maybe having the car at someone's house where it's not in their sight every day, and say that it needs to be examined for a recall, it could potentially work.
Those are really great suggestions. Yael, maybe you can talk a little bit about, I think sometimes these new techniques obviously take some practice and take a little time for us to incorporate. What can we do if we find ourselves in that moment of escalation, where we have sort of fallen back on our old behaviors and habits, and how can we sort of de-escalate in the moment?
Yeah, so that is great. And I think that's the key. That's when I recommend pulling out your phone, or, generally I have mine often on me in my pocket or around. I'm just like, I'm getting a work call, gotta go. That's something that they understand, that they wouldn't argue. They'd be like, oh, they're having a work call, okay. Just anything like that to get you out of the room. For you to realize, like, this argument is torturous and getting me nowhere. I need an exit plan. The cell phone is something easy to get, or I left something on the stove. Let me just go check it. Again, they're not going to check you on the details, but you getting yourself out of that room, out of that situation is really for you, because we don't want to be more exhausted and or frustrated, and it's really hard when your loved one is coming at you for something that you haven't done or making absolutely no sense, and you're like, you get confused because you're thinking rationally. It's just spinning into a rabbit hole. So we want to find little we have to find little things. Maybe sometimes it's a rubber band or whatever works for you. Signs around the house that say, breathe, calm, fiblet, therapeutic lie, whatever you need as a reminder. Or I sometimes like to say that, you know, we carry our bag of tricks on our back and just somehow imagine like, okay, I'm putting on my my security outfit. Nothing they say is going to affect me right now. I can just breathe and stay calm, and maybe I have to go change the battery on it or something. But just ways that we can build some sort of reminder to protect ourselves. But again, using the fiblet helps. I know we don't want to lie to our loved ones. We never have lied to our loved ones. We don't want to maintain that practice, but the key to this communication is to not look at it as lying and to just use it as more of a protective measure, because they can't understand all the ramifications of every decision that we're making at the moment. They just don't have all the wherewithal, and or they're obsessing about this thing that we can't change or may not even be true. So we just have to remind ourselves of little exit strategies that we can use for our sanity.
I love that, exit strategies. You can imagine the exit sign above our heads.
Yeah, whatever works.
Whatever works. Any other questions for Yael or circumstances or scenarios we can take a few minutes to run through. We will also be sharing a one-pager after this with some reminder tips. So hopefully that will help. And also as a reminder,
I wanted to share my screen. Yep. Let me just, can I do that for a sec? This is a great one sheet from the Alzheimer's Association that I share with a lot of my caregivers. It's the reminder of the don'ts, the don't reason, don't argue, don't confront, don't remind them they forgot. They do not like to be quizzed. Don't question recent memory, and don't take it personally. So important to remember all these things. And then the do's of give a short answer, allow plenty of time for comprehension, repeat instruction, eliminate but from your vocabulary, avoid insistence, try again later, agree with them or distract them, accept the blame when something's wrong. It's so hard to do that. I know nothing I say I expect to be taken like, oh, no problem, I got this. All of this is super challenging, especially when it's heated, and especially when it comes with the feelings of the relationship that you had with this person for your whole life. I can easily say, just come up with a fiblet, because I'm not personally involved. So 100% it's much harder when you're personally involved. But these are just general tips that work. Leave the room if necessary to avoid confrontation. Respond to the feelings rather than words. Remember, they will always respond to your emotional output, no matter what, till their dying day. So sometimes it's less about what you say than how you say it. So I like to just use this also as an example, but especially in the later stages, sometimes it's just a matter of maybe you taking their hand and calmly soothing it or massaging it, and you can say like, I am super frustrated right now. You have no idea what this is like. Maybe not those words, but I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed, and I want to rip out all my hair, da 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 da. And they're responding to the soothing of the touch and the soothing of my voice and the eye contact I'm making, less to the words that are actually coming out of my mouth. So that's sometimes a helpful practice. Respond to feelings rather than words. Be patient. Be cheerful. Be reassuring. Practice forgiveness, and elevate your level of generosity, which you already have. And these are tips to just remember about the disease, and some examples. And if you want, Alex can email that to you, so you can put it on your fridge or by your nightstand or wherever is helpful for you to have that.
Yeah, perfect. And also just a reminder, I'm sharing our website here. We have lots of additional resources, on the HFC website, so please feel free to check those out. And if you haven't signed up for our weekly newsletter, please do that on our website. We include tips and resources, and then links to our weekly drop-in support groups, as well as these weekly webinars. And we hope that you have found some of those extra supports helpful. And so with that being said, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Yael, for your time today and for these really great tips. And we hope that these are helpful. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and have a great weekend.